All right, welcome back everyone to Modern Learning Lecture number 6. We're going to be discussing a interesting topic today that builds upon what we were previously talking about. So a little bit before this video gets uploaded, I'm going to be uploading a lecture 5 where I pretty much discuss what is true and what isn't online. And a quick short rundown of that is what is true and what isn't. What's true is online is whatever is emotionally triggering you. All right, so anything that makes you feel a certain type of way, in particular fear and anger, those are the emotional takes, the emotional news articles, narratives that are going to be perceived as true online. The truth, obviously, we know is going to be somewhere in the middle of every extreme, but that narrative will never be pushed dominantly online because it doesn't generate enough clicks, you know? And so to quickly run down what we've been talking about in this breakthrough, right? We have lecture 1, data is the raw material that AI is trained on. We kind of skipped a few, and then we get to data turned American attention into inventory. Now it's being able to measure your attention, and we're able to predict. And now you can see we're even able to monetize it. And then we hit lecture 5 where emotions become the trigger mechanisms, as we just talked about, fear and anger. And now we are on lecture number 6. And we've got a really interesting topic today because it directly relates to a lot of us, okay? And this topic is modern day echo chambers are the same as the Salem witch trials. Okay? And it's important to note, right, that when I say this, I don't mean that all social media is negative and all social media is inherently evil. That's not the focus of what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is when a community gets small enough, scared enough, and closed enough, the truth stops protecting you, conformity does, okay? And that's important to understand. So the core thesis behind this, right, is that Salem didn't need actual real witches that are going around flying on broomsticks, casting spells. All it needed was fear, okay? That is all that the Salem witch trials needed, is fear, right? And with that fear, a closed information environment like we saw in the, what was this? Like the 1600s, 1690s or whatever, 1690s to wherever they took place, right? They do not need anything else other than fear, closed information environment, and a stage for accusation. And that is essentially the modern echo chamber to a T, you know? So we have fear leading to accusation, which will then lead to social proof, which will then lead to conformity, which will then lead to punishment, and then which will then lead to silence, okay? Silence. And so that is essentially the formula that we can see with the Salem witch trials, all right? And it's going to be interesting as we break this down, okay? So we can do a quick side-by-side, right? So yeah, the Salem witch trials were in 1692. Then we have modern day, which we could say, first off, so that we understand, talking about modern learning, the 2010s is when we saw the rise of the Internet of Things, is when we saw the rise of data, which is a callback to lecture 1, which gives us the AI able to train, the Internet of Things. We're able to connect with each other instantly from anywhere in the world. So that was in the 2010s. Now that we're talking about modern day, in terms of where we are now, we can easily say 2020s. I mean, you could even still throw the 2010s in there, especially later on the back end where a lot of people were migrating to using online apps, uh, chat interfaces, forming their own communities online. Now in the 2020s, we see the absolute late stage of that, okay? So we have the 1690s, early 1690s versus the 2020s, right? So let's do a side by side. I hope one of these markers holds. All right. Yep. Okay, so 2020s versus 1690s, right? All right, so this was the Salem witch trials, and we can break it down. So in terms of where everything was coming from, where was the authority, where was everything existing? Well, if you're in 1690s and in the colonial United States, you understand that your only community is essentially who lives in your village. And at the head of the village, the people with the most social hierarchy, the people with the most structure and clout, if you will, are going to be the churches. And the church and the court pretty much acted as one sole authority. Okay? Oops. Wrong side. So we have the church as authority. As authority as off. Okay? So in online today, what are we seeing as acting as this? What are we seeing acting as this in our terms of our modern society? Well, we see the algorithmic feed as the sole authority. Okay? Algorithm. Why? Because that is how you're going to get your information. That's how information is being spread now. Whatever the algorithm deems is relevant for you in particular to see and view, that is what's going to be shown to you. Okay? And so we can move on to, all right, what evidence, right? So in the Salem witch trials, what evidence was there? It was really no necessary 100% truth that anyone was a witch. It was pretty much all hearsay. And you can even say spectral, right? Hearsay. Spectral. Meaning it's pretty much just word of mouth, me telling you and you going off of my word. That's what this was. And this is really a good comparison to the modern day. I didn't mean to do a thing through that, but this is a good comparison to the modern day because we can actually tie it to the echo chamber in terms of canceling somebody or outcasting somebody, and that being somebody, say, maybe screenshot, without context. Screenshot with no context. And what I mean by this is, right, say you're joking with your friends online, and you might make an edgy joke or a joke that may be in poor taste. Somebody screenshots that, uploads it online, and then all of a sudden it's an outrage, and we've got to get this person, and this person shouldn't be allowed into these spaces anymore because of this comment that he said, even though the entire time we don't even have the full context. We don't know this person at all. We only know what is being screenshotted and shown to us. So that is how those are connected. We have the algorithms, and compared to the church, we have the screenshotting with no context compared to the hearsay and spectral evidence. And now we can move further into what happens once this is out there, right? So if you were a girl during the Salem witch trials and you were accused of this by the hearsay spectral evidence, then guess what? You're going to have to confess for mercy, okay? You're going to have to confess for mercy. Whoops, I keep doing this. You have to confess for mercy, right? that is ultimately going to be your only path, you know? And this is actually really cool because it relates to the 2020s. People aren't confessing for mercy anymore. What are they doing? When somebody messes up online and they have some of their dirty laundry come out, what are they going to do? You know, they're going to get in front of the camera and it's going to be, I sincerely apologize and I apologize XYZ and yada, 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 whoop, whoop, whoop. And so they're going to make an apology vid. Okay? Apology video is what's going to happen. Okay? So that is how that gets its comparison. So we have the algorithm serving as the central authority in deeming what you can see, what you can't see. And we have the churches as the authority based on what information is true and where things go and who gets what fact. So then we have the screenshot with no context, or somebody says something about somebody, the same with the hearsay, and it gets spread around online and then it blows up, and now all of a sudden you're making an apology video or you're confessing for mercy, right? And it gets even deeper than that, right? Because say you are friends with somebody, say you're friends with somebody in the 1690s, right? Salem witch trials. They're accused of being a witch. Are you going to come out and say, hey, I actually grew up with this person, I know them, they're a good guy, they're a good lady or girl, whatever. Are we sure we want to prosecute her as a witch? Are you going to come out and say that? Of course not. Because if you defend yourself, then guess what? If you defend accused, you defend accused, you are suspicious, right? Because what are you doing accusing a witch? You know, and the church brought this on us. You know, the church isn't going to lie. They're going to tell us who's the witch and who's not, and that has to be it. You're not about to go and defend somebody and go against the church, because that's going to ultimately, you know, make you suspect and make you start to be questioned now. And this fits right in to the 2020s, because guess what? If you decide to defend the alleged suspect of whatever screenshot without context is being uploaded and pushed around, guess what? The same thing's going to happen to you, okay? And it's framed differently now. So, defend accused. You're now one of them, right? It doesn't matter how much evidence there is out online for you about anything. You know, if a screenshot goes around and, you know, it's out of context and might be poor taste, you upload an apology video, and you're looking at your friend like, hey, I know he's not like that, let me stand up for him. Guess what? You're one of them, you know, because it's the same as the witch trials, because you're suspect. If you're defending the accused, you're automatically suspect. So that is where that leads to. And we see it a lot now, you know, and it's coming from people. You can see somebody accuse anybody online of anything at this point in time, whether it be right or wrong, you know, whether it be true or not. You're still going to get accused and blamed as one of them, even if everybody in your local community knows it, everybody in your family knows it, everybody that supports you knows it. All it takes is a small minority online to end all of this, you know? You're now one of them. And we can move on. Let me make sure you guys can see. Yep, okay, cool. So we can move on, right? Okay, so who is doing all of this is something that might be a question that you might ponder, right? Who is doing all of it? Who would dare accuse somebody of doing this, right? Well, in the 1690s, it was mostly afflicted girls that were making these accusations in the first place, right? So afflicted afflicted girls. Right? And what this essentially means is that we're talking about a small minority of people making large accusations. Okay? And these group of people, in this case, the afflicted girls in the Salem witch trials, were a core group of young women, usually between age 9 and 20, whose unexplained and spectral accusations sparked the witch trials. And, these symptoms, they led to hundreds of arrests, right? Pretty much off of all word of mouth because, you're not going to stand up. Nobody's really going to stand up, especially to challenge them because why? Because then you're going to be accused of being sus, So it was only a small minority of afflicted girls that were pushing for witch trials and witch hunts, and making the accusations in the first place. And how they would do it is they would go to the church, said they might see something, and then the church would take it from there. And in today's day and age, right, what do we see? Okay? So in today's day and age, right, we see the loud minority. Okay? And what this is the people online that exist online to only stir up conflict. And as we mentioned in the previous lecture, only the negative emotions are going to dominate the news cycles. So any situation where we're able to cancel somebody based off of a negative pretense, push somebody down based on a negative pretense, it's going to be pushed by the loud minority, right? And that's why in these times you often see them become the loudest voices. Even no matter what, if they're right or wrong, they will become the loudest voices. Those people that are telling the truth will become quiet, and eventually it just becomes there's no point of even joining the argument anymore because it's so polarizing on both sides. And with the loud minority on either side of the aisle could push you into this entire cycle, okay? And so that is really good to understand. All right, so now we can get to the punishments, okay? So what was being dealt out as punishments for this, right? Well, it's pretty simple. In 1692, if you were accused of being a witch, you were going to be executed. Executed. No matter what, That's just how it is. If you don't confess or you don't say you're a witch, you're the blah, 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 I'm not a witch or whatever, you're going to get executed, no matter what. And yeah, that's just how it was back then, There's no actual verifiable way to tell if somebody's a witch. But try to tell that to somebody in their closed loop system, in their closed society where the church has authority and they're pretty much the end all be all. Try explaining that to them. You're not going to be able to because nobody's going to go against it. Nobody would dare stand up for somebody about to get executed. Why? Because they could be next, and this is the same cycle of information spreading dominated by fear and anger as I was talking about in a previous lecture, where the dominant news, the dominant algorithm, what you see is going to be mainly controlled by anger and fear because those are the strongest emotions, There was a Salem witch trial. There wasn't a best member of the cabin trial, or best member of the tribe trial, or whoever cleaned the horses the best. There's no that because that's too positive. We need negativity, and negativity sparks action. So that's how we're able to get from all of this to she's a witch to execution, because anger and fear are the dominant emotions that spark action. And so that's what happened in the 1690s. Today, it is you get deplatformed, right? And we see this a lot with people that are popular and have, you know, a lot of a strong following online, people that exist online, and say they make one of these comments, like we said, they get screenshot without context, they deliver the apology, you know, it's still going to be the loud minority pushing for them, and they get deplatformed, right? It doesn't matter if they make money online, they make a living online. It doesn't matter where they are. It doesn't even matter where they work, because the loud minority isn't going to stop until you're completely deplatformed to where you can't make a living anymore. So it's not quite just you getting executed, but it essentially is in that same way social execution, because now you can't operate in society how we've deemed it online, you know? And like I said, with the rise of the 2020s, everything is online. Your whole entire life is online. So if you get deplatformed, and especially if you're somebody that makes money online or you have a high profile case or something like that, you are going to be deplatformed offline, online. And it could even go further than that. You could be, you know, destroyed reputationally, you know? So you can actually add that /rep damage. Okay? These people don't care. You know, they do not care what money you make online, or where your kids go, how you interact in person, how are you with your community. All they care about is this screenshot with no context. Why? Because it makes them angry. Right? Makes them angry. Anger. So that's why the anger sparks the deplatform and the execution. It's the same thing, you know? It's essentially the same thing where she's a witch, sparks fear, and then now you're getting executed. You know, it's the same exact thing in terms of a psychological standpoint, but now it's online. So that's something that's interesting, right? And it's important to note, no matter what, there will be no reckoning, okay? No reckoning. And what do I mean by that? I mean, no matter if you were proven 100% for the right, 100% that you did this out of context and there was a bigger story, and no matter what, you're still the good person that you are. No matter what, it's still there. And even if you were deplatformed, you lose everything, there's going to be no reckoning. You're not going to be able to get any of this back. You're not going to be able to stop this cycle, you know? I think they did something in the Salem witch trials where it's like, oh, if we can toss this witch into the water or whatever, and if they float and they survive, then they're a witch. But if not, they weren't a witch all along. All of them drowned, and they still had no reckoning. Their names still weren't cleared. It was a flaw in the system. It was never the person's fault at the top. It was never, you know, any of this. They couldn't even possibly fathom how fear could spark them into executing an innocent girl. You know, they couldn't fathom that. But in today's day and age, we're seeing it play out exactly. And just think about the last person that you've seen, you know, get canceled or get piled on online or something like that. Did they ever get reckoning? My guess is probably not. So that's something that you definitely want to understand. And to understand this even more, right? What Salem did more than anything, let's see where I'm going to write this. I want to keep this up. What Salem did more than anything is it proved a community does not need facts to destroy someone. Okay? That's what the Salem witch trials ultimately proved. And now this is such a pivotal point in history where we can look back and see the exact things being replayed and repurposed on today's society in a way that's completely nuanced and flies over most people's heads. Because like I said, most people are existing inside of the algorithm. And this was from me talking about it in a previous lecture, but most people exist inside of an algorithm that dominates them and controls what emotions they are seeing. And guess what? Guess what emotions they're going to play on the hardest? Fear and anger. Because they lead to action. You understand? The algorithm is designed to where it wants to show you the next post that will cause you to spark action. You know, it'll cause you to try your best to join in on the witch hunt and try your best to join in on the deplatforming of somebody or the call to cancel somebody that you have no idea about, that you don't know and you've never had a conversation with them in person. It's still guiding you towards that because it's playing on the exact same psychology. And that's something that you have to understand. You know, we never really fixed this problem with technology. We just gave it better Wi-Fi, you know? And that is something that is a huge problem in today's society, but it needs to be addressed and it needs to be talked about, or else we will just keep competing this cycle over and over again, you know? But yeah, I hope you guys liked this video. Yeah, this was really fun to make and it was really fun to talk about, and I will catch y'all in the next one.